Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. We help sales managers and leaders make more money, save time, and become kick-ass leaders of their sales teams. And that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast. We are here to give you the tools and tactics to build a well-oiled sales machine and teach you the mental toughness skills so you can show up confident, focused, emotionally in control, and ready to energize your team. It's time to talk sales leadership and mental toughness. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome everyone to today's podcast. It is Matt Phillips, and so fired up to bring you a very special guest. And we're going to get into it today. You know, you have heard me talk on prior podcasts about the importance of coaching and surrounding yourself with great people. And I'm so just excited and humbled that our guest is joining us today, a man named Jim Brogan. For those of you on the prior podcast have heard me talk about my coach. And guess what? This is Jim Brogan. So we're going to dive into everything mindset, leadership on today's podcast. But let me tell you a little bit about Jim, and we'll get into the impact he's had on me later. But Jim is the founder of Jim Brogan Consulting. He is a former NBA player, coach, and speaker. And his personal mission is to develop and promote champions. Now, his message, his work with massive corporations, with amazing athletes, literally has no bounds. And I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg here on people that he's worked with. But he's worked with NFL coaches and players such as Matt Ryan and Drew Brees. I'm sure if you have any knowledge of football, you know who those two people are. Coaches like Jack Del Rio and Dan Quinn. He's worked with major league players such as Cole Hamels. The list goes on, and even Hollywood producers. So outside of that, he has presented a Fortune 100 companies such as Nestle, Qualcomm, and KPMG, as well as aspiring medical and business students. And probably the thing that gets me, most excited about Jim is you're about to find out, a heart for a lot of different people, not only athletes and business leaders and moms and dads, but also student athletes. He is one of the original founders of Pitch It Forward Foundation, which is helping student athletes develop different leadership skills. So I hope you're ready. I'm so excited to introduce you to my coach, Jim Brogan. Jim,
Matt, it
welcome.
Doesn't get any better, baby. How are you? This is
so good.
I love you're doing this. This is good stuff, man.
Oh my goodness. It has been a long time coming. And, Jim, I was thinking, right before our podcast, you and I met probably 7 or 8 years ago. And the first time we met was at a speech to sports psychology students in San Diego. And I spoke at the event, you spoke at the event, and I immediately knew I had to come up and introduce myself and get to know you. And then lo and behold, the past couple of years, you've been my coach, and I'm so thankful for that. But crazy to think how long we've known each other. And I think my timing's right, 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, it goes fast. I mean, you look at it, you say 8 years. Wow, 96 months gone. And you and I have discussed this, the power of time and the relevance of time, and what are we trying to accomplish and what are we going to accomplish?
Yes.
And that's people miss that. And I explain that to people, especially on a deep dive, saying, please don't tell me you don't have enough time. What you don't have is priorities. Pretty simple.
Yes.
Pretty simple.
Well, I remember when we first started working together, you asked me a pretty powerful question. And it was very simple, but you asked me, like, why are we doing this? Like, why do you run this business? Why are you doing what you do? And you actually made me write that down. And that was kind of my test to get to know if I would be able to work with you. Why is that so important? Like, you see clients like myself or just people in general, like, understand like that just deep meaning of like, why do we do this every day?
Well, it's something that was done to me. And my history has been working with science-based neurologists over 40 years. So I wanted to know, what was the science behind people that could make transformation or transformations? And what would it take to do that? Where could I learn this? And coming from, and you know this from being a pro athlete, when you get to the top of the mountain in that one industry, great. Now all of a sudden you go from the top and you're in the middle, you're at the bottom, starting all over again in something that's going to interest you, something that you can make an impact, something that can drive results.
Yes.
So for me, it was a couple of instances that occurred that I saw people that were making incredible decisions and getting incredible results, and I wanted to study it why. And it started from, and people have access to this information. This is the part that I explained to people and why I had you write things down. I still have things written down.
Yes.
And it's proven you can use that Google, DuckDuckGo, all those different avenues that are available out there. It's been proven that if you write it down, the probability and possibility of accomplishing it or getting closer to it is up exponentially. So that's why, as a prerequisite to work with myself or any other people within the group, you get a success journal. We're giving you a journal, and for two reasons. Number one, we wanted you to write it down. And number two, Matt, think of all the documentation that you've left now or that you've done with me. Just think of the things we've written down.
Yes.
And you've had these marvelous accomplishments. You've made a huge difference with companies and people in general, and also people in the sports world. Think what your kids will be able to read as they get in their 20s, 30s, 40s. And it's like, wow, I never knew this about my dad. I never knew this about my mom. The sad part about my business over the 40 years of being a consultant is I've had people call me and get in touch with me that they're reading their journal from their father or their mother who passed away. They're 29, they're 30, they're 35, and they're finding out things about their parents they never knew.
Wow.
That's the point. The wow you just said. It's so powerful.
That's very true. When you look back we spent a lot of time talking again about that why, about writing it down, about, constantly coming back to it. And I have my little journal sitting off to my left right here that I go through and take notes on every call that we're on. And my clients, I laugh sometimes because I'm like, okay, guess what you're going to write down now? So it's taking lessons I'm learning. And where's that whiteboard? Where's that piece of paper? Let's write. Get it out of your head. Yeah. But I think it's a powerful point to be able to go back and look at that and see the history and that transformation that you mentioned.
That's it. And you own it. You wrote it.
Yes, that is very true. How did you get into this world, Jim? Because I know a little bit about your background. Not everyone does, but how did you get into this in the first place?
There's probably three incidents that occurred. As a former pro athlete, one of the decisions I made to make a difference, because they're asking you to go a lot of different places when you're a pro athlete, because there's only so many pro athletes in every town. Yes. If you have a basketball team, a football team, a hockey team, a soccer team, there's only so many people that can go out and do things. And there's so many charities in every city across the country. So I decided that I was going to go to Children's Hospital. I was going to bring shoes in that I could get from Magic Johnson playing against him. I brought shoes in. Anybody's shoes I could get after a game. Say, hey, can I get your shoes, man? Like, what do you want my shoes for? Well, I take them to Children's Hospital. We just sign them for me. And I've had doctors say to me, when you bring these shoes in or you bring these jerseys in, it impacts these kids' lives. These kids that might be terminal with cancer, these kids that are there with something just horrible. And I've had doctors say to me, something happens to them kinesthetically that impacts their life. They get a little bit better.
Yes.
So someone saying that to you for the first time and you're 24 years old, it makes an impact on you.
Yeah.
So I was very loyal to doing that once a month and taking stuff down to kids at Children's Hospital. And then, you see what happens, and sometimes kids don't make it. And it's awful. It still happens to this day. So that was one thing. The second thing that occurred was my mother having a stroke, and the doctors telling her, I remember flying back and forth from San Diego to Philadelphia a great deal, saying she'll probably never walk. She's going to have trouble speaking. And my mother was a competitor, and long story short, telling her she's never going to play tennis again. 9 months later, she's back playing tennis.
Okay? Wow, really?
I want to know what happened. I want to know the science behind what happened in her brain, that the connectivity between certain things to get her to use her right arm again, to use her left or right leg again, because the brain was on the left side. I want to know what happened. So I started studying it. I had doctors that would teach me, and I started learning more about the science side of the brain and how you can impact people's lives.
Yes.
Such as writing. We know that writing does make a difference. And people say, oh, I'm doing my computer. We don't allow people to take notes on their computer.
Yes.
We make them write it for the twofold of, we know what it does writing, and there's articles out there that have proven this. And also, someday if you do pass away and you leave behind a legacy with kids, they're going to be able to feel your handwriting. They're going to be able to look at your handwriting. It's going to make a bigger difference. And people go, wow, I get it. I understand.
Right.
The third thing was, I had a mentor who was a really tough SOB. I mean, the guy was not a nice person. He was adopted. He became a multi-billionaire. He created thousands of jobs, and he just wasn't very friendly. Let's put it that way. So he said, look, if you're not going to read 10 pages of a book a day, I'm never working with you.
Really?
Oh, okay. And I want to learn from this guy because I know he can teach me what I want to know. So I started reading 10 pages a day, and he said, look, I want you to read about Winston Churchill, Nelson Mandela, and Abraham Lincoln, and Eleanor Roosevelt, and, all these different people, Michelangelo. He made me read about Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Picasso and Van Gogh and Rembrandt. He wanted me to understand what these people accomplished when they didn't have a computer. They didn't have access to Home Depot. They didn't have tools back then. However, they created marvelous inventions, marvelous paintings. You look what Thomas Edison did, and Nikola Tesla, and the Wright brothers, and Galileo. And I just found that there were common denominators amongst these people that created art. They created machines. They created something that today it's built upon because of what they did. So I studied it, and there was 10 pages a day after 40 years. I mean, think about how many books I've read.
Yes.
And that's not to impress your audience. You know that. That's not me.
Right.
That's to impress upon your audience. Please don't tell me what you can't do. Please don't do that. I tell people, how are you being unreasonable? What 3 areas are you being unreasonable? And I always get, well, what do you mean? I don't have to repeat the question. You're a bright person. What 3 areas you're being unreasonable? Let me give you some examples, Lisa, Tony, whatever your name is.
Yes.
1962, a guy unreasonably said, we're going to put a man on the moon. And John F. Kennedy got people inspired, and 2 years later, we put a man on the moon.
Yes.
Pretty fascinating when you stop and think about it. And people don't understand. It's like, I look at them and I think, why is it we can't be unreasonable?
Very true.
Elon Musk was unreasonable when he went to GM and Ford and General Motors and all these companies and said, I know how to build a car and run it on a battery. And they said, go away. You don't know what you're doing. Get out. And he said, okay, I'll show you.
Yes.
Sarah Blakely, no background in clothing whatsoever. And, went to Disney and didn't work out at Disney when she graduated from Florida State, went to be an attorney. That didn't work out. Decided to start a little company called Spanx. Became a multi-billionaire in 5 years?
Yes. Yes.
So people can't tell me the opportunities aren't out there. You're taught to be reasonable as opposed to think unreasonable.
Yes. So let's dive into this a little bit, because first of all, what I love is the curiosity. I think you and I have very similar backgrounds, coming from the business world and then starting businesses like this. And I think the same thing led me to this business that led to you. And it was this curiosity of watching people, studying it, understanding like, what's the difference? Why do some succeed where others fail? Why are some, when they launch a product, are uber successful where others aren't? And how do we optimize that performance, right? What's the difference between a Division I college athlete versus a professional NBA player? And the constant study of that. Let me ask you this. We had a conversation about this a long time ago. Now, and this is why I love talking to you. It brings up things from the past, which is in my journal. You and I had this debate. You asked me a question one time, what's more important, nature or nurture? I don't know if you remember that conversation. This is probably years ago. Nature versus nurture. And my answer, I remember at that time was nurture, right? I mean, nature plays a part of it, absolutely, right? For skill set, call it natural born leaders, or I can shoot a basketball, things like that. But I think we underestimate the nurture piece of it, of like the work that we can put in mentally, physically, emotionally, all that sort of stuff. What are your thoughts around nature versus nurture as we look at being unreasonable and pushing the limits and finding out what's possible? What are your thoughts around that, Jim?
That's a wonderful question. And you're right. We've had those conversations because I know the impact you have on other people. Nature, I mean, if I was 3 inches taller, I'd still be in the NBA, maybe.
Right. You're about 1.5 feet, Jim. So
exactly. Give me 20 extra pounds and 3 more inches. And now I'm 6'9". I'm still in the league, maybe.
Yes.
So what are you doing as far as the nurture part? Who am I around? And we ask this question. This will really, I think, enlighten your audience a great deal. It's more questions that you ask, such as on the nurture side, who am I around? What do they have me doing? Where do they have me going? What do they have me watching? What do they have me listening to? So there's constants that you can actually determine in a person's life, whether they're 15 or whether they're 65 or 75, it doesn't matter. There's certain constants that are there that you can impact the nurture side. For example, when I was telling you earlier about that gentleman said, if you're not reading 10 pages a day, I'm not helping you. Well, 10 pages, depending on the font size, we're talking 6 to 10 minutes a day, maybe 12 minutes.
Yes.
And then you have me start taking notes on those 10 pages. So hence I have over, 48 success journals of notes from books, TED Talks, interviews, which changed everything. Why? I can't rely on a system to teach myself or my clients to be successful or be accomplished or take risks or learn to fail big. The system today, and we have the greatest educational system on the planet. Look how many people from different countries come to our school system to learn.
Yes.
We know that. However, this is 2023. We need to just impact the dynamics, such as having a 15-year-old sit in a class for 55 minutes, sometimes an hour and a half. I have adults that can't sit still for 55 minutes. I make them stand up every 12 minutes. Why? I need to get the blood rushed up into their brain so I can increase the electricity. So I know that's a nature side. So there's the nature. You sit still, your blood is at its worst point. It's so steady that that's not going to help you learn. It's not activating the energy that you need, and it's not increasing electricity in the brain. Yes. So there's the nature side of something right there.
Yes.
So on the nurture side, anybody that's listening out there, if you're a sales manager, if you're a teacher, if you're a CEO, about every 12 or 15 minutes, you should get people up, stand up, stretch, change seats, introduce yourself to someone.
Yes.
Do something different that people remember. They go, why are we doing this when they first walk in the room? Well, because you've probably been sitting there for 15 minutes and you're probably thinking about your kids right now. You're thinking about your husband, your wife, your father's probably in the hospital. Your mother might be in the hospital. You're not really actively listening. It's an interesting 2 words, actively listening.
Yes.
I don't even know why we have meetings anymore sometimes. I sit in these companies and I have meetings and when we leave, I go to someone's office and I go, tell me the 3 top things you're supposed to accomplish. And when I hear, that's one, you just said, that's one, you got 2 more left. And of course they laugh,
yes.
But I'm challenging. I can be holding people accountable at a very difficult and challenging level.
Yes.
And people say, why do you do that? I say, because the success in life is in the struggle. You and I both know that. The success in life is in the struggle. You knew it as a pro athlete. You knew it when you started your company.
Yes.
You watched it with your kids that are trying to be great in sports, great in school. The success is in the struggle.
Yes.
The system today, I see them try and design that young people in general, salespeople try and make it easy for the salespeople. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Be an effective communicator. Enhance your communication skills. Recommend a book. You know what I mean.
Yes. No, totally. Well, I think it's that, to your point, who you surround yourselves with. And I remember, when I initially hired you, right, whatever, year and a half, 2 years ago, whatever it was, I remember our first call and it's like, I need someone to push me and I'm not doing it myself. So I need you to do that. And I remember your comment to me was, are you sure? Like, are you ready for this? and, and it's one of those things. And when you're in that moment and you're surrounded by the right people, yeah, I was like, oh, geez, I think so. And I knew at that moment I was ready. Right. So, but you have that moment of doubt where you're just like, oh my gosh, am I really ready for this? But as soon as you jump and do it, that's where like amazing things start to happen. Right. So our conversations, as blunt as they are sometimes and as focused as you help me maintain, it's like the best thing that I can do from a nurture perspective, right? Of I need you, Jim, to help me nurture my skill set and figure out what's in my way and get rid of it, whether that's reading or taking notes in a journal or asking the tough questions or getting me to think outside the box and differently, to be unreasonable and think about what could be and stay focused on what could be and make that happen. That's, I think, the beauty in that nurture aspect.
I hope that all your listeners just wrote down what you said. I mean, as a professional, I have 3 professional board of directors. IBM has a board of directors. Microsoft has a board of directors. They're there to give advice to the CEO, the CFO, the COO. Okay, they're there to give advice. Those board of directors bring collectively different experiences, different accomplishments, different failures, and they give advice to a CEO or to whoever they're speaking to. Yes. Why doesn't a person in a professional setting have a professional board of directors, 3 people that they trust, that they know they're not there to be friends with?
Yes.
They're there to find out what are the possibilities. And studying the brain as long as I have and watching what people have accomplished, it's there for whoever wants it. And it's the nurture side. Does nature play a part in it? Yes, I don't discount that. Right. I don't. However, what can be accomplished, the Super Mario effect, if anyone's ever read that, it's there. It's possible.
That's very true. Well, and for those listening right now, when you look at leaders in different corporations and in sales and not in sales and all these different areas, how do you help them work through some of these struggles? Like, what are some tips, tricks, things that they can utilize to start working through some of these things? Because you and I've done that. I don't want to make this about me and what you tell me and all that stuff, and we can dive into that. But what are some things that when you look at, I assume there's commonalities between an NBA player, a NFL player, a Major League Baseball player, and a corporate, sales leader. How do you help them start kind of working through some of those struggles?
Shakespeare, because I've read so much about it, said all the world is a stage, and based on how you play it, the world around you will reward you or punish you. So people get to decide, and they don't realize they get to decide. That's why this might help a great deal of the people that you work with. Every new person that comes on board, and I don't like the word employee, I like the idea of a team member, just because in sports it's a team. I see companies that, KPMG is a team. Qualcomm, every chip that in an Apple phone comes from Qualcomm. They're a team. And I've watched where certain companies have missed in the very beginning on the onboarding process. We don't teach a person to become familiar with how the company's story came to be. So they don't know what to internalize. That's why, read Steve Jobs' book. I've interviewed people that have known him.
Yes.
And what he went through. And you think about, wow, they fired the guy from his own company. And he ended up coming back.
Right.
And he came back, and he didn't come back smarter as far as doing things. He came back with more empathy. He came people. So I'm fascinated when I go out to a company that people aren't able to tell you and explain why they're at that company, why they choose to work for that company. What is it about their story? What's the lens through your glasses did you see the story of this company? And how does your story interact with it? And we'll have CEOs, we'll have human resources. We don't have time for that. Really? Let me see here. Your turnover rate is around 26%. And to get a new person on board, you're spending about $15,000 to $17,000. And I can do the numbers and let people know if you did a little differently and we can cut that down to half, think what you could do.
Yes.
And this is the heart of your company. This is the heart of your brand, is your team.
Yes.
So we've got to create MVPs. We got to create superstars. We got to create super fans inside the company first, because it's virtually impossible to do that outside your company.
Yes, it is.
I mean, I tell people, treat the people so well, they can't imagine ever leaving.
Right.
Well, that means I got to really make a damn commitment. No kidding. You're the person in charge.
Yes.
You're the person in charge.
Oh,
and so you have to teach people processes that they can do on what we've talked about. I think I've mentioned this to you before. If I haven't, I've been remiss. They got to do it on what we call an incremental basis with a compound effect. And we have to go through that, what an incremental basis means. I remember working with CEO, this was, I don't know, maybe probably 10 years ago, at a technology integrated to make circuit boards and all that. He knew every person's name, Matt. I mean, it was shocking to me. We must have run into at least, I'm going to lowball the number, at least 75 people. Nobody had name tags on. He knew everybody's name.
Wow.
I remember asking him, I want to know, what's the turnover rate of this company? I mean, how many people? He goes, hardly anybody. I said, do you ask the VPs and the directors to know everyone's name? He goes, it's first thing.
Really?
First thing he does is you have to know everyone's name. In your department, you got to know their name. You better know how many kids they have. You better know when their birthday is. You better know who's sick. You better know who's pregnant. You better know you could see what he was doing.
Yes.
And it made an impact. Now, tell that to today's CEO who's over the age of 55. They're going, I don't have time for that crap.
Yes.
Well, okay. I get it. I'm not in the convincing business.
True. That is for sure. Yeah, I know one other person who's done that as a company, about 500 people. He knew everybody's name. Same experience, Jim. Walking around, he would say hi by their first name. And I asked him the same question, like, how do you do that? And he says, I study because I want them to make sure that they're valued and they're worth something. So why can't I take a few minutes to learn their name?
I hope people are writing this down. That is so important.
You bring up a great point too. You're reminding me. So my oldest daughter, who you've talked to, Madeline, she just took a new job at being a hostess at a restaurant. The onboarding process, Jim, from what I heard, I didn't experience it firsthand. I hear it secondhand, was atrocious. They didn't explain, to your point, anything about the company. They didn't tell her anything she had to do. No training whatsoever. Just kind of threw her in, and it was basically good luck. And thank goodness she's a versatile young woman, and she was able to figure it out and make it done. And the worst part was that it's a husband and wife who own it, and the wife walked in and did not say hi to my daughter on her very first day.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Now all of a sudden she has an impression when she greets people, she doesn't even know it. It's almost subliminal. That she doesn't greet people with a smile. She doesn't extend, certain things. And the owners, and that's pervasive across the board,
yes, not
just with restaurants, but companies in general. You can tell what a company is by the person that answers the phone or you're greeted at the front desk.
Yes.
If there's one thing that we do, and I'm working with a person who is with the Navy SEALs for 20 some years, and we do it on a science base. Our mission, and I keep using that with him now after 3 years of being around him,
yes,
is to develop leaders to be authentic. And we have to go over what does authentic mean to you? Give me 5 things that's authentic to you. It's fascinating to just listen to people, write that down, listen to them talk about it, and then write it down. What kind of culture do you want to create with your team here? Name 3 things within your culture. How to use incremental and exponential change. But what are you doing to create incremental and then exponential change?
Yes.
What are the processes in place to hold people accountable and inspire the entire organization? These are questions that now all of a sudden is science-based because you're going to be asked to think and then write this down.
Yes.
Because if I go ask your executive team what you're writing down, if they don't repeat what you just wrote down, I'm going to be here for a while. I might be here for a couple months.
Right. That is very true.
But we can increase the sales. We increase your numbers.
Yes.
That's a measurable thing. That's one thing that we can do. We can all of a sudden put things in a place where it's easy to measure, period. I mean, this isn't rocket science right now. It isn't.
No, it's not.
Nope.
When I heard another CEO, I interviewed another CEO for the podcast, and he talked about how his philosophy was that at any point you should be able to walk up to anyone in the organization and ask them, what is the vision of the company? Where are we going? And he said, if they can't explain it, that's my fault as CEO, because that's my job to paint the picture and show them and tell them where we're going so they can do their job most effectively. And I think it's that setting the tone, right? Of, to your point, like, it's not just a onboarding process, right? Let's follow the process from step A to Z, but are we designing something that people want to be a part of, setting the tone attitude-wise, customer service-wise, how we treat people. And it takes time to do that. And it takes effort to do that.
I came up with, you remember the magazine GQ?
Yes.
A lot of people know GQ. And GQ is a world-class magazine. I mean, even the advertisements they put in there for anything, it doesn't matter. It's just world-class.
Yes.
And I just thought, okay, how can I get people to remember something that will assist them to create those world-class results, to make sure they hire world-class people that month after month, meaning 19, 20, 21 days every month. That's all there is. 19, 20, 21 business days. So GQA, gauge. So GQA, gauge. So what are the most impactful interactions that as a CEO or your sales team can elevate people into a memorable experience? A memorable experience is, and I'm working with two co-CEOs, and you talked about the name thing.
Yes.
I said, if you're not going to remember people's names, because I went to their office for a couple of days, I said, if you're not going to remember people's names, I'm not working with you. It's been nice meeting you both. I'm not working with you. That's an impactful interaction within the company.
Yes.
That's possible. That's a nurture thing. You can do that. And that's an experience for people. Then you can all of a sudden bridge client. How you gauge the client's journey in what your product is selling. You quantify. There's the GQ. How do you quantify it? Okay, let's track those moments with people within the organization and the customers or clients outside the organization. You can easily quantify that. It's right there. I mean, how do I do that? Think, come up with some ideas, be creative. I don't want to tell you everything. Right. Well, I hired you to do that. No, because if it's your idea, it might be even better.
Yes.
I can't believe you just said that. Well, come on.
I just raised my fee by saying that.
Exactly. And then assess it. Just maximize the important moments for people within the organization that they can't stop talking about it. All of a sudden, they come to their desk, and on their desk is a birthday present. Maybe it's a book. Maybe it's a cake. Maybe it's something, a really nice pen.
Yes.
And I've seen it happen where people don't leave organizations because they know that the people in charge care about them.
Yes. Yeah, it's taking the time to know your internal customer, right? You know your teammate.
Exactly. Couldn't have said any better.
I think it's huge. Let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a different question because I'm just curious. Your NBA days, there's got to be some good stories you have, I'm sure, from when you played in the NBA. Who was the toughest person you played against coming up in the NBA? Does anybody stick out? And what was so unique about them that made them hard to play against?
I remember because I was playing, I started with the Warriors with the Golden State, and a guy named Joe B. Carroll was the first draft choice of the league, and he was tough. And then I went and played for the Clippers. And I remember playing against, because I went back to Philadelphia, and I'm from Philadelphia. And we're playing against the Sixers, and Julius Erving, it wasn't really a matchup between him and me, but every once in a while there was a switch, so you did have to play him. Man, I'm telling you, he was so quick, could just jump out of the gym, and a great professional. I mean, a true professional. So you're always weary of what he was going to do. And then Larry Bird, I watched what he did another time where I didn't really play against him one-on-one, but when you're out there on the floor, you get these switches that occur. And
Yes.
I remember telling guys, hey, I'm going to make this three on you. You better come out on me. And he drained a three, and he's talking to you the whole way down the court. I mean, he just ran his mouth the whole time. And of course, I'm from Philadelphia. So, okay, he's not really talking to me, but I finally have to say something because I'm going to get in his face, And it was just those type of moments. And then you run into him 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years later. And you bring these moments up and they go, I remember you, man. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you remember me. You're damn right you do.
That's hilarious. Hilarious.
But it was fun. And, I played against Magic Johnson because we're in the same division.
Yes.
So you're playing them a lot, for a couple of years. And you just go to learn the ins and outs and the battles you go through, because this is, in any sport at the pro level, as you know, in baseball, you're playing against the best of the best. I mean, these are the best athletes on the planet that are playing in the NHL, Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA. These are the best. So that really explained to me that every night, even practices, I remember talking to Steve Kerr about this and then talking to Michael Jordan about it. They made practices were brutal. The practices were brutal. And the story of, him and Michael Jordan and Steve Kerr getting into a fight because practices were difficult. That was to make you so much better. So when you played in the games, it wasn't as difficult.
Yes.
There's a process behind that.
So, because these are key points, right? Like how do you strategize your day? And we can use this in the business world. But when you look at from an athletic perspective, I mean, you're working with these like the Drew Brees of the world and Cole Hamels and your comment about like who's like a true professional. What makes and this could be in the business world too, but like focused on sports, like what makes like a amazing professional, like a true professional versus just somebody who's playing at the pro level?
Wouldn't that be a great question to ask a high schooler or a college person?
Yes.
Why don't you write down for me 3 areas, and I ask high school, college people to do this. Write down 3 areas that would make you a great player off the court and on the court. Because the reason, if you don't ask those type of questions, you're never going to find out, and they have to write it down. So now, once you read what they've put down, you get to look into what they're thinking. You get to look into their brain. Yeah. And off of those 3 things that they write down, now you can put processes in place. You can put checklists in place. I get upset when people put checklists on their phone. We don't do that. We have a document. I think I sent one to you where we want you to write down checklists. And I did a lot of flying on planes with people, and you're sitting next to the pilot and they have a checklist that they go over.
Yes.
Even Han Solo in Star Wars had a checklist. I mean, before he took the Millennium Falcon up, checklist with Chewie, right?
Yes.
We need physical checklists so that people know what they're going to accomplish in that day.
I think that's such a key point. And I know at the especially professional level, but even when I look at like the best salespeople, best sales leaders, things like that, leaders in organizations, it's that intentionality with like, what am I doing today that's going to move the needle forward, that's in alignment with like why I'm getting into this in the first place and why I'm doing this. And then those just moment by moment decisions to override the I don't want to's or I don't have time, or just that intentionality and constant focus. Would you agree with that?
You are spot on. And we actually call it deliberate practice. In sports or in business, I tell people, listen, you might as well just go and work and be very deliberate for 4 hours. Leave your phone in the car. Leave your phone in the car and go in and be deliberate and create relationships with sales that you're making with the people you're talking to. Yes. I got turned down on about 3 really big consulting assignments over the last 5 years. And I sent handwritten thank you cards to the people that I talked to. Sometimes it's a group of people. Sometimes it's maybe a team of 3 people. Maybe it's just one person that makes the decision. And instead, they brought in McKinsey and Company. They brought in Accenture. They brought in Korn Ferry. They brought in someone. And I've sent a card to those people. And I put in my phone, I'll put a follow-up for 3 years later, 4 years later. I'll put that in my phone. And honest to God, I'll end up getting the consulting assignment. because I'm deliberate. I'm extremely deliberate. And excellence demands an effort. It demands that you practice with difficulty. Andres Erickson wrote a book about this with deliberate practice. It's similar to anyone out there listening with your audience that has kids. If they're playing basketball, they should be deliberate in swishing the ball from the free throw line. Don't tell them to shoot the ball. Don't tell them to work harder. If they're playing hockey, okay, put the puck up in the top right-hand corner. So the puck goes in 10 times, but only went up in the top corner twice. You're 2 for 10. Yeah, but the other 8 went in. No. That's not deliberate. That was not deliberate. So we look at what people do as mindless activity. It's mindless. And that's the danger of practicing sales calls. It's mindless activity. That's a danger instead of being precise, deliberate, and where it's trackable. If there's that access, it's accountable. You can make an assessment from it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Well, and it made me think. I just was working with my alma mater varsity baseball team, just finished up with them this year. Same thing. I would walk around as they were hitting, just in the cages, messing around at practice. And I'm like, what are you working on? Like, specifically, what are you working on? And I said it differently, but it's that precise, it's deliberate. It's don't just hit a ball to hit a ball. And that's something that I didn't understand, honestly, Jim, growing up. It was kind of like, yeah, I'd work on outside pitches every once in a while, but I'd want to hit it up the middle or in my wheelhouse inside, right? Because that was more fun. Instead of, no, let me deliberately work on the outside pitch. Let me work on, not necessarily a weakness, but I've got to work on the things that's holding me back from, getting where I want to go. So deliberate and trackable. I love that. Yeah, it's like you can easily measure, right? Of you made X number of calls. You made, to your point, 2 out of 10 in the top right corner. Like, what are you working on? Why are you working on it?
And people do this and they don't see it because it's subconscious and they don't have someone observing. And remember, 83% of what we learn is by sight, 11% by hearing. That's why studying blind people over 35, 36 years, when I first started this, it's fascinating. And they're deliberate in what they do. They have to be because they've lost the main sense, the sense of sight.
Yes.
And you just talked about deliberate practice. It's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable activity.
No.
And yet improvement requires attention to detail. Working with all the quarterbacks in the NFL, there wasn't a deliberate improvement where you're going to be precise in throwing the ball. And by the way, I want you to do it with your eyes closed. Well, I got to do my eyes open. Why? Who told you that? How many times have you thrown this ball to a receiver going up and out, up and in? So deliberate practice requires 100% focus. We can accelerate that, especially in some type of sport, if they do it with their eyes closed.
Yes.
And that's the greatest challenge of deliberate practice, is to remain focused for 6 minutes with your eyes closed or 3 minutes with your eyes closed.
Yes.
It's not easy, but neurologically, we're creating new neural pathways. Same thing with sales. We can do that. We can have them say, okay, you walk in the office, close your eyes, explain to me what you're going to do. Well, I'm going to start talking to them about, we have the solar panels they can do. No. Look around the room. See what's important to this person in that room, in their office. Do they have pictures of their kids? Is there a picture of them at a vacation? Is there something on their desk? Mm-hmm. Start a conversation with something that's important to them. Be deliberate about it.
Yes. Oh, it's so critical. And back to your point earlier, do that not only with your external clients, but what about the people sitting right next to you in the office or on a Zoom with you? Look around. I mean, all you have to do is look at my background on a Zoom and you'll see pretty much what interests me, right? My bobblehead that my daughter gave me and the sign that says, just keep going, and books I've read. And you learn a lot about me really quick just by looking at my background.
I was going to comment and congratulate you and give you a hug on all those books. And I was going, now I know the story about the bobblehead. It's like, yes, I love it. I love it. But you're right. That right there is important for people to understand. When they walk in your office, people don't understand that they have about 0.6 seconds to make an impression.
Yes.
The way the electricity carries in through the brain, it's about 0.6. And then you give them examples. And they I never knew. I didn't know when I first started doing this until I went through all these 158 human experiments over close to 40 years.
Yes.
I mean, I've read books where doctors ask me, I mean, what the heck am I reading? What do you mean this happens? That? However, you learn one thing and you can bring it to a client, you can bring it to a company, you can bring it to even a friend, you can bring it to an athlete.
Yes. So true. Yeah. The power of the brain, I mean, we know like the tip of the iceberg, right? Of the possibilities. But to your point, going back to being unreasonable, way at the start when we started talking of that ability to challenge the status quo, challenge the possibilities, to be unreasonable at points. I think that's the fun part. I think that's why, people get these opportunities like the Elon Musk or these pro athletes, is they've challenged like what is possible. And they've done the work, that deliberate practice, that intentionality, surround themselves with great people, all the things that you've talked about today. That's what's going to separate you from everyone else.
Let's make sure they write that down and put it in their bathroom when they brush their teeth as a constant reminder of what the possibilities are. It's a great question. You've seen other people do really well in your sales organization, in your manufacturing organization, your marketing organization. Okay, tell me about that person. Well, Sandy does this, this, and this. Okay, tell me about another person. And they do this, this, and this. And I'll take notes while they're telling me. What are the possibilities that you could do this, and give me 3 reasons it could happen? Not 3 reasons it can't happen. Give me 3 reasons it could happen. They tell themselves, well, yeah, I could do that.
Yes.
So what are the actions? What are 2 actions we need to take for you to do that? You said earlier, one thing we've talked about is, what is your want and what is your why?
Yes.
Put the pictures up to remind you. Write it down so I can hold you accountable, because I do have very challenging conversations with people. So wait, hold on. I have this down. You told me this February 24th, 2023. This is what you wanted.
Yes.
Now, wait a minute. Last week, you did nothing towards what you told me you wanted. Did you change what you want?
Yes.
Yeah, well, stop. Well doesn't fit in my box. It's a little tiny box. Well is a story. Well doesn't fit in the box. And it's tough for people sometimes. Well, look what young people have to face today. And, geez.
So true. Yeah, you reminded me of, because we've had these conversations too, where I'm very clear on what I want, why I want it, what we're marching towards. And I think the ability to have someone like you in your corner, right? Because I know you have my best interest in mind, but you ask the tough question when it needs to be asked. And it's actually quite a simple question. It's not even a tough question of, okay, you start off almost every call with, hey, so this is why we're doing what we're doing, right? We're still in alignment. That's still what we're here to do. And every time I answer yes. And then whenever I start going somewhere else because the squirrel runs by, it's a pretty easy question. Like, well, are we changing what we're going after? And then it's that easy focus. Like, no, we're back to where we were at. Thank you.
Well, when you talk about what you wanted, the amount of people that you're going to help get what they want is tremendous. The exponential effect is incredible. So the more you get what you want, people don't understand because they don't see you at your office. They don't see the work you put in. They're going to get what they want. That's an amazing awareness to me.
Yes, that's true. That is true. All right, Jim, I want to be more of your time.
There's where it works.
I could talk for hours with you, my friend.
Yeah. Good stuff. I can't. It goes too fast, doesn't it?
It does. It goes way too fast all time, right? My goodness. Well, real quick, and then we'll let you get rocking and rolling. But if people want to connect with you, Jim, how can they best do that?
It's interesting. I gave a speech up in Santa Barbara recently to 300 executives, and I got 167 emails back. And I answered every one of them. It took me 2 weeks to answer each one of them. It was great. It was marvelous. And you love that because it's a touch point that you can keep the educational process going.
Yes.
And make sure they follow up on their action items. But, I've got a website people want to go to, Jim Brogan, Brogan, jimbroganconsulting.com. And if you want some, just put one question there. Don't put 10 questions in there. Put one question and I'm a person that always gets back. I never leave someone by the wayside just because I love my business and that it's very boutique, very centered on certain people that really want to know that nurture side. And as you know, it's simple, but it's not easy. And that's the way you get better.
Correct. I love that.
You bet.
Simple yet not easy.
Mm-hmm. Simple to read 10 pages a day, baby. Simple to read in that success journal.
Yes,
simple to be early, simple to stay late. It's simple.
Yes. So true. So true. Well, I can't thank you enough. I know you and I will be speaking soon, but thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been an honor, and I always look forward to our conversations. And I know sometimes you don't look forward to the accountability side of it, but I got to do that to you because I care.
I love it. I love it.
All right, my man. Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Thanks, Jim.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big-time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock-solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator, mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.